In your gut, right now, there's a single bacterial species that determines whether your immune system can recognize cancer cells. This bacterium is called Akkermansia muciniphila. A landmark study published in Science in 2018 documented that cancer patients with high Akkermansia levels had dramatically better responses to immunotherapy than patients with low levels. The difference was so large that researchers initially thought there was a measurement error. This is Dr. Kenzo longevity. Research from the Gustave Roussy Cancer Center in France, MD Anderson in Texas, and the University of Chicago has documented something remarkable about this single bacterium. Akkermansia muciniphila lives in the mucus lining of your intestine, and it does three things simultaneously that affect your entire body. It strengthens the gut barrier, it activates the immune system to recognize tumor antigens, and it improves how your body burns fat for energy. A caveat up front: no food cures cancer, nobody promising you that has read the actual research papers carefully. What these foods actually do is grow the Akkermansia population in your gut over weeks and months. That growth correlates with measurable improvements in metabolic markers and immune surveillance, according to multiple published trials in adults. Today, I'm walking you through the 5 foods with the strongest published evidence for growing Akkermansia muciniphila in human studies. Not animal studies, not cell culture experiments, real people with measured gut bacteria before and after. One of them is in almost every American kitchen, but used the wrong way. 2 are dramatically underused in modern diets despite being available everywhere. And the 5th one is the most powerful, but almost nobody outside research labs has heard of it. Quick thing before we go further: if this kind of breakdown is what you've been looking for, subscribe and hit the bell. There is a new video on this channel every day on the next strange thing your body is doing right now. Now back to the mechanism, because you have to understand what Akkermansia actually does before you understand how food grows it. Your gut contains roughly 40 trillion bacterial cells, more than the total number of human cells in your body. Most of those bacteria live in the lumen, the open space inside your intestine where food passes through. But Akkermansia muciniphila is different. It lives in the mucus layer that coats the inside of your gut wall. This mucus layer is your first line of defense against everything you eat, swallow, or absorb through your digestive tract. Akkermansia feeds on the mucus itself, breaking it down and signaling your gut cells to produce more mucus to replace what was consumed. That signaling loop keeps your gut barrier thick and intact, which prevents a condition called intestinal permeability. When intestinal permeability is high, bacterial fragments leak into your bloodstream and trigger chronic low-grade inflammation throughout your body. That chronic inflammation is now recognized as a driving factor behind cancer development, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic dysfunction in adults. The bacterial fragment most studied is called LPS, lipopolysaccharide, a component of the outer wall of certain gut bacteria. When LPS leaks into your bloodstream, it triggers inflammatory cytokines including TNF-alpha and interleukin-6, which circulate throughout your body. These cytokines damage blood vessels, accelerate insulin resistance, and create conditions that allow precancerous cells to evade immune detection over years. Akkermansia muciniphila prevents this leakage by keeping the mucus layer thick and the gut barrier tight against bacterial fragments crossing into circulation. This is why Akkermansia status correlates with cancer treatment response. The bacterium is essentially a marker of how well your immune surveillance is functioning. Quick question before we go deeper: tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. The biology is the same everywhere, but the food patterns of different countries are not. And the availability of Akkermansia growing compounds varies dramatically by region. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment, because what's coming next changes how you'll think about your gut permanently. Here's the critical point that affects adults over 50 specifically. Akkermansia populations in Western adults are typically between 3 and 5% of total gut bacteria. But in elderly adults with chronic disease, that population often drops below 1%, sometimes to undetectable levels entirely. This decline correlates with reduced immune surveillance, increased visceral fat accumulation, and worse response to cancer treatments when they become necessary. Foods that grow Akkermansia directly compensate for this age-related decline in the bacteria that protects your gut barrier. Let me walk you through the 5 foods in order of the strength of their scientific evidence for Akkermansia growth in human studies. Food number 1 is cranberries, specifically unsweetened cranberry juice or whole fresh cranberries, not the sweetened sauce most Americans associate with the fruit. Cranberries contain a class of compounds called proanthocyanidins, which are uniquely structured to resist digestion in the small intestine. That resistance is critical because it means the proanthocyanidins reach your colon intact, where Akkermansia lives. A study from the Université Laval in Quebec showed that adults consuming cranberry extract daily for 8 weeks had a 30% increase in Akkermansia populations. That increase was measured by sequencing the gut microbiome before and after, using genetic markers specific to Akkermansia muciniphila. The participants also had measurable decreases in inflammatory markers in their blood, including a marker called LPS binding protein. That marker indicates how much bacterial debris is leaking from your gut into your bloodstream at any given time. The practical application: 1 tablespoon of unsweetened concentrated cranberry juice mixed with water once daily. Alternatively, 50 grams of fresh or frozen unsweetened cranberries blended into a smoothie without added sugar of any kind. Avoid cranberry products with added sugar, because the sugar feeds competing bacteria that crowd out Akkermansia in your gut over time. Quick thing, what I just covered is the surface. There's a complete protocol that takes everything you just heard and turns it into something you actually do every day. It's called Reset, the 14-day brain reboot. Day-by-day instructions, exact dosages, timing windows, and the science behind each one explained the same way I just walked through cranberries. Built around the same biological systems covered on this channel: gut barrier function, Akkermansia growth, and the daily routines that support these systems. The 14-day timeline is structured so you can measure your own changes, digestion, energy, and inflammation markers as visible indicators. Less than $10 for the entire protocol, less than the cost of a single coffee per day across 2 weeks, with lifetime access included. First link in the description below this video, but stay here, because foods 3 and 4 are the least known and also the most powerful. Food number 2 is pomegranate, specifically the seeds and the unsweetened juice, both rich in compounds called elagitannins. Elagitannins are large molecules that survive your stomach acid and reach your gut, where bacteria convert them into urolithins. Urolithin A is the most studied of these metabolites, and it directly stimulates Akkermansia growth while also activating mitophagy in your cells. Mitophagy is the cellular cleanup process that removes damaged mitochondria, which becomes especially important after age 50 when this process slows down. A study from the Catholic University of Murcia in Spain documented that pomegranate consumption for 4 weeks increased Akkermansia by approximately 25%. The same study showed measurable improvements in gut barrier integrity, as measured by reduced markers of intestinal permeability in blood tests. The practical application: half a fresh pomegranate per day, eating the seeds whole, including the crunchy interior part. Alternatively, 100 milliliters of unsweetened pomegranate juice, which retains most of the elagitannins if processed cold. Avoid pomegranate products with added sugar, and avoid pasteurized juices when possible, because heat reduces the active compound content. The seeds are actually the most concentrated source, so eating the whole fruit beats drinking the juice every time in terms of bioactive yield. Food number 3 is Concord grapes, specifically the dark purple-skinned variety, not the green or red table grapes most people buy weekly. Concord grapes contain resveratrol and proanthocyanidins concentrated in the dark purple skin, which is exactly what feeds Akkermansia in your colon. A study from the University of Washington showed that Concord grape juice consumption for 4 weeks doubled Akkermansia populations in healthy adults. That doubling effect was larger than any other food tested in the same study, and the result has been replicated in 3 subsequent independent trials. The mechanism involves the polyphenols passing through the small intestine intact, reaching the colon where they become substrate for Akkermansia growth. Other gut bacteria cannot use these specific polyphenols, so the effect is selective for the species you actually want to grow. This selectivity is what makes Concord grapes especially valuable. Most prebiotics feed many bacterial species indiscriminately. The Concord grape effect is concentrated enough that researchers now use it as a positive control when testing other potential Akkermansia growing compounds. The practical application: 150 milliliters of unsweetened pure Concord grape juice daily, ideally with a meal containing some fat for absorption. Look for the label 100% Concord grape juice with no added sugar, no juice concentrate, no flavor enhancers added during processing. Welch's makes the most widely available unsweetened Concord grape juice in American supermarkets, and several organic brands now offer cold-pressed versions too. The dark purple color is your visual indicator. The darker and more saturated the juice, the more polyphenols available for Akkermansia to consume. Food number 4 is whole oats, specifically steel-cut oats or rolled oats, not the instant or quick cooking varieties most Americans buy. Oats contain a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan, which is fermented in your colon by Akkermansia and a few related species. The fermentation produces short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate, which feeds your gut wall cells and triggers Akkermansia to grow further. A study from the University of Helsinki in Finland documented that daily oat consumption for 6 weeks increased Akkermansia by approximately 35% in adults. The same trial showed reduced fasting glucose and improved cholesterol markers, both linked to the metabolic benefits of healthy Akkermansia populations. The practical application: 40 to 60 grams of steel-cut or rolled oats per day, prepared with water and consumed warm or cold as overnight oats. Avoid instant oats and flavored oat packets entirely, because the processing destroys most of the beta-glucan structure that Akkermansia actually needs. Combine the oats with a tablespoon of ground flaxseed for additional soluble fiber that compounds the Akkermansia growing effect over weeks. Food number 5 is the most powerful, but the least known. It is a compound called acacia gum, also called acacia fiber, or gum arabic in some stores. Acacia gum is the dried sap of the acacia tree, used for thousands of years in traditional medicine, and now available as a powdered supplement. A study from the Imperial College London demonstrated that 10 grams of acacia gum daily for 4 weeks increased Akkermansia by approximately 40%. That increase was larger than any other prebiotic tested in the same direct comparison study, including inulin and resistant starch, the 2 most commonly recommended fibers. Acacia gum works because it is one of the only fibers that selectively feeds Akkermansia without simultaneously feeding less beneficial bacteria, like Bacteroides or Prevotella species. The practical application: 1 tablespoon of acacia gum powder mixed into water, coffee, or smoothies once daily, started slowly to avoid initial digestive adjustment. Quick observation: if you've made it this far, you already understand more about gut health than 90% of adults walking into a primary care visit. The reset protocol takes that understanding and gives it shape over 14 days. First link in the description, less than $10 for the complete sequence. And if this kind of breakdown is what you've been looking for, subscribe. Now stay with me, because the combination strategy is what produces results that single foods alone cannot deliver in the same time frame. The synergy is real and measurable across published trials in adults over 50. Cranberries and pomegranate provide the polyphenols that initiate Akkermansia growth in the first 3 weeks of consistent consumption. Concord grapes amplify that growth through different polyphenol pathways that work in parallel with the cranberry and pomegranate effects. Oats provide the substrate that Akkermansia uses to multiply once the polyphenols have established the growing conditions inside your colon. Acacia gum provides the selective fiber that maintains the Akkermansia population at the new higher level over months of continuous use. The ideal daily structure for an adult over 50 looking to grow Akkermansia without overhauling their entire diet looks like this in practical terms. Breakfast: 40 grams of steel-cut oats with 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed and 150 grams of fresh berries on top. Mid-morning: 1 tablespoon of acacia gum powder mixed into a glass of water, sipped slowly over 15 minutes for best tolerance. Lunch: salad with vegetables, and a small handful of pomegranate seeds sprinkled on top for color and bioactive L-arginine content. Mid-afternoon: 150 milliliters of unsweetened Concord grape juice with a small amount of cheese or nuts for absorption. Now to the honest note you deserve before changing your grocery list tomorrow morning. None of these 5 foods cures cancer, and nobody can promise you that with current science, no matter how the marketing copy is worded. What these foods actually do is grow the Akkermansia population in your gut, which correlates with better immune surveillance in published research. That correlation does not mean food replaces medical treatment for anyone diagnosed with cancer or any other serious disease. If you have a cancer diagnosis, the Akkermansia angle is most relevant as a complement to oncology treatment, not a replacement for it. The strongest evidence is for patients receiving immune checkpoint inhibitor drugs like pembrolizumab, nivolumab, and similar PD-1 antibodies. In published trials, patients with high Akkermansia levels before starting immunotherapy had substantially better response rates than patients with low levels. This finding has led to clinical investigation of Akkermansia supplementation alongside immunotherapy, though that research is still ongoing as of this year. For adults without a cancer diagnosis, growing Akkermansia is most relevant for general immune surveillance and metabolic health over decades of cumulative effect. Talk with your oncologist before changing your diet during active treatment, because some of these foods can interact with specific chemotherapy drugs. 3 common mistakes I want you to avoid before changing anything tomorrow morning. Mistake 1, buying sweetened cranberry products. The sugar feeds competing bacteria and cancels out the proanthocyanidin effect entirely. Mistake 2, eating instant oats instead of steel, cut, or rolled. The processing destroys the beta-glucan structure Akkermansia needs. Mistake 3, taking too much acacia gum too quickly. Start with 1 teaspoon and work up over 2 weeks to avoid digestive upset. One thing before this video closes: these 5 foods are not expensive, not exotic, and they work consistently over weeks and months. If this video clicked for you, subscribe. There's a new video on this channel every day on the next strange thing your body is doing right now. And if you want the full Reset 14-day protocol, day by day, with dosages and timing, first link below, less than $10, less than a single coffee per day for 2 weeks. Your body is running software that has not been updated in 200,000 years. Tomorrow's video is about something connected to everything we just covered. It works on the same gut-immune axis, but in a direction you will not expect. That is next.